Here again, Robin the Sudoku guy with yet another tutorial number 71, and this one is part 1 of 2 tutorials on the same topic, because it's a big topic. It's called the empty rectangle. Now, why they call it the empty rectangle, I don't know. If you know, please tell me. So anyway, without further ado, let me start by saying there are 2 fundamental things that you need to know to be able to do this particular technique and get rid of small numbers. The first one is the conjugate pair. Now, we covered this in a previous tutorial, but I'm going to just quickly revise it. A conjugate pair is where you have only 2 little numbers in a row or a column or a block. But in the case of this technique, it's just basically rows and columns. In this particular row, it only appears twice. That makes it a conjugate pair. Now, there's another thing you need to know about a conjugate pair, which is very important in order to understand what I'm going to cover today. If this is a 2, that will not be a 2. In other words, if this is true, that becomes false. And vice versa. If this becomes a 2, then this cannot be a 2. So that becomes what we can say it's true, and we say that this is false. With that in mind, let's push on to the second most important thing about this tutorial, and that is, in its empty rectangle, there are several shapes that you can identify, and I'm going to show you them. I think there's around 5 of them. They can all fit in a block. So let's have a look at those. The first one I'm going to show you is this one. I call it the big L. There it is. And now it can fit into this block this way. These are little numbers, by the way. It can fit this way. It can fit this way. And it can fit this way. 4 ways you can find it in a block. Now, in this particular case, I've put little 3s in each cell. But you don't have to have that, but you do have to have at least one of those little numbers in each arm of the L. Now, here's, for example, I've got a 3 here and a 3 here. That 3 is in this arm, and this 3 is in this arm. And if that's the case, this will still work. You'll see later. Let's have a look at another shape now. This is what I call a little L, a small L. And this can be found in more than just 4 times in a block. Let's have a look. Here it is one way. Here it is another way. Here it is another way. And here it is another way. But you can also find it this way or this way. You can also find it this way or this way or this way and that way, all kinds of different ways. So keep that in mind, but take note, here we have one little number in one arm and another little one in the other arm, and in this case you've got more. So there's many ways they can show up in a block when you are looking for them, and you've got to look for these. And after a while you get used to suddenly seeing them. You've got to remember these patterns, these shapes. Here is my next one. It's the big T. Now the big T is very popular. Later on I'm going to actually show you it being used. It can be this way. It can be found this way. It can be found this way. And it can be found this way. 4 positions. Once again, it can also occur this way, where you only have one number down here, but that number is in this arm. And this number is in this arm. So that's all that's needed. You'll be able to solve it that way. Now we come to the next one, which I call the little t. Have a look. Here we have a little t. Yep, it can be that way. It can be that way. It can be this 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 way. And it can be, just a minute, this way. All different positions. But every one of them will work for you. In this case, you'll see that we have one number in the row and one number in the column. That's what you have to have. You can have more than that, but that is a must. Okay. Now let's go to, I should point before I go on to the next one. This is very interesting. Sometimes you could call that a big T. You never know. Sometimes you could call it an L. No, not an L. No, it's a T. Upside down T. Sometimes you can call it different other names as well. Here we have the final one, and I should have made this in red. It's a cross, like the Red Cross. And in this case, it has that position, that position, that position, or that position. Take your pick. And you could have something like this, and it still could be, you could still consider it as a cross, or you could also consider it as a little t. A little t. Okay? So they're some of the shapes that can fit into this one block, can fit in, they'll go to all blocks, but they're just some of the shapes that you're going to have to learn to watch for. Okay? I'm going to show you a lot more a little later. But now I want to show you some fundamentals. Okay, now here we have things that we've got to look for. Look for, first of all, a conjugate pair. And here's our conjugate pair. Secondly, we look for a pattern or a shape within a block, which is part of the empty rectangle. And then, this is the most important part of all, you find out if one of these arms joins up with one end of the conjugate pair. That's the key. This is called X. X from now on will be where it joins up with a column or row in this block here. And once you've found that, so there's three things. You find the conjugate pair, you find the empty rectangle, then you look for a conjugate pair where one end of it actually connects with the row or column in this area here. And what I've done here is to show you that this, in fact, is in the same column as this part in here. Now that's what we're looking for. Now I'm going to tell you a secret here. This is the fun part of this whole process, because we can get rid of that 5. I'll show you how later. But I want to show you how this pattern can happen all over the place. Hold on for a second. We could probably have this conjugate pair over here. We could have it down here. We could have it along here. We could have it along there. Let's see what happens when we do that. And we still find our X, Y, Z. Now, I've changed the whole pattern over here, and we could have it over here. We could have it up in here. We could have it down here. We could have it over here. It can be all over the place. It's just to show you that it doesn't just happen in that section of your puzzle. So here we have on this side, we have this X is there because it lines up with one of the arms of the T. And it is the end of this conjugate pair, CP for short, conjugate pair. It's at the end of the conjugate pair. So that's an X because it's the end of the conjugate pair and it lines up with the top of the T, with the same row. Now, if you have that situation, and this would be your Z this time. Now, let me tell you, the fun comes because that 5 can be removed. And sometimes if there's only 2 little numbers in there, you've got a big number. Maybe I'll do one more now. Now we come to the climax of this tutorial, because I'm going to show you the logic as to why we can remove that 5. You've probably noticed I've added a 4. There's a reason for that you'll see in a minute. Let's look at this 5 here. The x plays a very important part in the logic of this. The x can be true or false. It could be a 5 or not a 5. It doesn't matter where it is a 5 or not a 5. This still will not be a 5. Let me explain why. If this was a 5, these 5s would be eliminated. They'd all go. That leaves these 2 5s. Now, if you remember rightly, way back in tutorial 2, I talked about the exclusion rule. In this particular block, if that 5 is taken away and you're left with those 2 5s mean that one of those has to be a 5 in that block. If that's the case, this 5 can be removed. Okay, I'll remove it. Okay, where's my red pen? I'll remove it, and that will make this a 4, big 4. But there's another reason why we can say that that has to go. Let's say this was false. It didn't come out as a 5. And that therefore became a 5. If this was false, that 5 means that this cannot be a 5 as well. So in both cases, if this is a 5 or not a 5, that cannot be a 5, and it will become a big 4. It's amazing how this conjugate pair helped that to happen. And I'm going to show you a lot more of the examples of these in our next tutorial. So don't miss out. Great having you on board. Bye for now.